You're listening to the Youth for Life podcast with Michelle Baum, Director of Y for Life at Lutherans for Life, where we prepare youth to be gospel-motivated voices for life. Be sure to stick around after today's live recording of our Chats for Life program to find out how you can be live too on our next Youth for Life podcast. All right, so I'll start with an opening just question for you guys, and that is, first of all, how many of you have heard about sidewalk advocacy or have heard about another term, sidewalk counseling? You've heard about it, okay. How many of you have participated in it? Yeah, me neither. Okay, so I am so glad that we have our expert here tonight. Renee is going to, who has lots of experience doing this, is going to share with us some of those finer details, but also maybe some ways that you can interact and participate in a very maybe a non-confrontational way. All right, so I'm going to hand it over to you, Renee.
Great. Well, I have to say, first of all, thank you for coming. I am always so inspired by young people, and the young people outside the clinic in St. Louis, the interns that I see and work with are just so awesome. And I used to teach at Lutheran High in St. Charles, so working with young people makes me feel young. So when I first went, I went with a seminary wife who had been going down there, and she wanted somebody to go down with her. And so for me, it was scary too, but at least I had a friend to go. So that would be one thing I'd recommend. If you have somebody that has gone, to go with them. And if not, at least take a friend with you, and then you can learn together. Often there's other people down at the clinic, especially during the 40 Days for Life campaign in the spring and in the fall. And so they could hold your hand and help you with it. But before we get into the specifics about that, so how do we approach this whole topic? You mentioned, Lauren, you mentioned in the Unplanned movie that it was well done, but I've seen many times when it is not well done, when I've witnessed people at the clinic yelling at those who are going in for abortions or for other activities, and how can you kill your baby? And as they'd see workers walking in, they would scream, "You've got blood on your hands." And I even saw one guy dressed up like a doctor with a lab coat on and a bloody baby in his hand, like he was an abortionist. So that is not the way we want to go at all in this. We want to go with gentleness and love, so that the women going in are as scared as you would be. They would be more scared than you to be on the outside, because it's generally not a place that they want to be. They've gotten in this situation and they feel hopeless, feel helpless, like they have no other choice. And so we can't think of them like, oh, they're just doing this lightly. And, as people say, it's just like getting a tooth pulled. Well, it's certainly not. And they deep down know it, that this is something serious, and they feel maybe trapped. I even heard it compared to like an animal that's trapped in a trap and is trying to gnaw its leg off just so it can get away. So we have to be really kind and gentle with the women, and also with the workers going in. I love the method that our young people do, where they are standing on the edge of the driveway, and they're smiling and waving. In fact, they're waving specifically with their left hand, because they found that that's less intimidating. And they are just cheerful and friendly and offering help and support. And that's what we need to do. We must be kind and friendly and smile and wave, even when others are not so nice to us. And if you've experienced that in one way or another, I'm sure, where you've gotten bad honks or bad gestures, but you certainly don't respond in a negative way to them. You just keep smiling. And we can't be angry. We have to be loving and caring, really caring for the women or the men or the workers, even the workers. You know, they may feel trapped and working there and they need a job. And one of my friends really works hard to try to find them jobs so that they can have another place to earn a living instead of there. I think when Michelle sent out the note, she started with saying, well, what about when one of your friends has an unplanned pregnancy? So maybe we can start there, because this all applies to them as well. The first thing, if you find out that a woman does, or even the boyfriend, you know, if he knows about it and confides in you, first you just got to listen and let them talk, let them cry, let them be afraid, and just be there and be their friend. And she's confused and maybe panicking, but she needs our love and not the law, not us saying, don't kill your baby. We just need to be there and go with them on this path. After you've listened a long time, then maybe you can offer tangible support, like perhaps going with them, going with her, going with him to tell the parents, or a coach, or somebody else, so that they don't have to go alone, because that's so scary. Most parents, I think, take it well when, you know, they're in shock when they find out their child or teen or young unmarried person is pregnant. But most of them get over the shock and embrace and love, but occasionally not. So they've got to know that they've at least got you as their support and their friend. You can offer to go to a pregnancy center with her or him, because that's where they've got lots of support, that's their business, to care for men and women in crisis. So I'd say, you know, it'd be good to know where a clinic is, a pregnancy center, so that, or at least have their number or look them up online, so that you've got that resource in your phone in case that comes up. So right now you need to care for him or her. And let's say it's your best friend and they say, well, if you're my friend, you'll take me down to the clinic for an abortion if you really love me. Well, you can't do it. You can't go there, because then you would be taking part in this decision that they're probably going to regret for the rest of their life. So, but to be with them, and then, you know, after you've listened, you can talk about the baby itself. But first, the woman's concerned about herself, and she's not thinking so much about a baby. But after you've listened, after you've cared, that's when you can kind of bring up that this is a child. The baby has a heartbeat in 18 days after conception. So it is so tiny. After just a few weeks, it has brain waves that they've been able to test. And so they know even early on, unlike what the media says, it's not a blob. So I'm going to stop there and let you respond or have questions or comments.
I had a question. So what do you do when you encounter people at a at an abortion clinic that are yelling those things? You know, you're there to be like a peaceful person and share a message of hope. Is there anything that you can do to counter that, or how do you react?
Oh, that's a really hard one, because they've got as much right to be on the sidewalk as you do. And I think one of my friends was a yeller, and she was one of those who had the ugly talk. She did a lot of good. She helped close down 10 abortion clinics here in St. Louis, but she didn't always use the kindest words. But when the young interns with the Coalition for Life started coming, they were modeling for her the good way to do it. And it was so effective, and women were turning around and changing their minds, so that I think we can still be kind, and others may learn from us in that way. and the ugliness is not real prevalent. I think they see the kindness and they often go away. And so at our clinic, it's been modeled by the young people and the method. It's been so successful. All righty. Let's talk about the clinic itself. You all mentioned, I think, the word intimidated or scared. I agree. It is scary. And when we take a seminary, my husband just retired from Concordia Seminary. And so we take students and their wives and teenagers down. And we always have a kind of training ahead of time to help them know what to expect. And then we go down together with somebody who's been there that can show them around and explain where you stand and what's going on. And then go back to the seminary and debrief and talk about it so that they're kind of protected in a group and they feel much more comfortable than going on their own or with a friend. So if you can, take somebody with you. And if you can't, then there's usually someone there that can help show you. Or you can ask somebody, you know, where should I stand and what should I do? Because every clinic will be a little different. And in your different states and cities, you might have different rules. They used to have what they called bubble zones. So, and they tried to pass, and I haven't heard about this in the last couple of years, where you can't get within so many feet of the driveway or the sidewalk, and you have to stand across the street maybe. So you really don't have much chance of talking to the women, if, you know, if you're yelling across the street at them or down the block. But at least here they tried to pass that in St. Louis, and it was overruled that was, you know, public property on the sidewalk, and people could stand there, or at least they could kind of walk around. And so you could be walking back and forth if you need to keep moving, for example. And then if you have the opportunity to just speak to someone, but you can walk and pray. And that's kind of where I want to go with the first thing to do. There's a thing, I think one of you mentioned, 40 Days for Life. And it's have you heard of that before? Brooke, you're nodding.
Yeah, my home church congregation participates in it. Yeah.
Oh, great. What this is, about 12 years ago, there was a clinic in College Station, Texas, where Abby Johnson worked. And people there had the idea to offer prayer, and they included some fasting and then education for their community. But the main part was prayer, and they would pray in front of the clinic for 40 days from Ash Wednesday till Palm Sunday. And they would, some cities would pray there around the clock. I think they started that, and some of the men would have the night shift every night from 2 to 4 or something like that. They were really dedicated prayers. And in St. Louis, we do it from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So different cities, but you could look up 40 Days for Life and plug in your community wherever you are at that time. I'm sure they have it in Chicago, since several of you are from there. And people sign up to go and down for an hour or 2 hours and pray. And they usually have signs that they provide. So that's kind of a good way to start when there are other people going down and when it's a specific prayer effort. So what do you pray for? Throw out some things. I'll unmute yourself and throw out some things that you might pray for while you're in front of a clinic.
Peace for the scared mother.
Mm-hmm.
That the Holy Spirit would fill their heart and help them understand that God will provide for them and for the baby.
Good.
Certainly, we want to have prayers for the mother, also for the baby, but also probably for the extended family, right? You have a mother and child walking in, and that mother and child is somebody's granddaughter and somebody's daughter. and prayers for that extended family that they might come forward and support, or that they might actually even be able to know, right, that it's going on.
Right. Good.
Prayers that the clinic would close and not offer these services in the future.
Good. Well, I've got a long list. You pray for the abortionist, that his or her heart would be changed, and the workers going in. Pray for the media that portrays it one way. Pray for our pastors and churches that they can speak, and that the congregation can, because we've got a lot of Lutherans, a lot of Christians having abortions. So we need to realize that and love the people in our churches, and for the pastors to speak and God's truth in very loving ways. Pray for the government and those that make laws, for our nation, for the morality of our country, those who live in the area, those driving by, or those that are neighbors, for those who have had abortions and suffered from that. And there's another people here called escorts, that they're inside the gate and they are volunteers just like we're outside, and they believe just as firmly that abortion should be legal, and they want to help women be able to get away from us crazy people outside. And so to pray for them, that their hearts would be turned. And one time I was there and I just was so moved and praying for them. And there were two that were standing close, and I just started to walk on and try to go up and talk to them inside, but you're not supposed to get on their property. So of course the security guard came out right away and said, no, you got to get off the property. So I didn't get a chance, but I was just praying for these two women because they're I would say misled, and they're believing things that are not, of course, not God's will, and they need, it's like when the Apostle Paul had the shackles taken off his eyes, when he was struck down by the Lord, and he had been killing Christians, and now he was becoming a Christian and making others Christians. So I pray that, they can come to see God's truth as well. You mentioned the Unplanned movie, and the clinic worker there was Abby Johnson, and she was in charge of the clinic, and her eyes were blinded because she had been recruited and thought that she was going to be helping women. And then as she worked up the ranks within Planned Parenthood, she she was just doing her job, and she was like voted the #1 clinic director of the year, at least in the state of Texas. And her story was, I recommend you see in the movie, that God changed her heart. And when she saw, it was like the shackles were pulled off her eye, and she saw what was going on, then she went outside, and she had been witnessing people standing out and praying outside the clinic on the other side of the fence. And they had even sometimes given her flowers and just shown love to her, even though you might think she's their mortal enemy, but she wasn't. And so they tried to develop a relationship with her as she'd walk in, and they'd try to talk nicely to her through the fence. So when the shackles came off her eye and she realized she could no longer be involved in abortion, she went right outside and right next door to the pregnancy center where they worked, or the Coalition for Life. I'm not sure what the name of their center was. And they welcomed her. They didn't shun her, of course. And then she became such an advocate and has told her story. And she even started a group called And Then There Were None, where she helps clinic workers find jobs if they will walk away. And so the whole thing of us being loving and winning people with love. And she even said that up to 70% of the abortions for her clinic would be canceled when people were outside praying. So folks would be driving by and they would see people out there and they would not go in. It's kind of like if, let's say you're going to do shoplifting, you kind of look around and see if there's somebody, not that any of you would, but just an example, you look around to see if anybody's watching. And if they are, then you're certainly not going to do something like that. I don't know if you got a better example of, you know, we tend not to sin as much if we think people are going to see it. And so many of them had prayed, Lord, show me a sign if you don't want me to go in there. And then when they get to the clinic, they'd see people praying outside and they would say, oh, thank you. Okay, Lord, this is a sign that I'm not supposed to go in because there's people there praying. And they have, you know, the people on the sidewalk don't know this is going on, but the women would come back several months later with the baby in their arms and say, this is the baby. This is my story. I was driving by and you were there. And I just saw a video clip of one. And when the woman came by, she was able to get hooked up with somebody who had been there praying and or maybe had talked to her, and then to see the results of that. So, but we want to make sure that we don't engage in politics. This is no place for that. And so you want to be careful what your signs say if you're holding a sign, but just know that, you know, while we can't see always the results, God is hearing our prayers, and prayer is critical to save the lives. And I didn't know if we mentioned praying for the men as well. Once I talked to a father who was outside the clinic and his wife was inside. They were married, but the laws are that men, even if you're married, have no say. Your wife can, you know, for you, Jesse, your wife could go and get an abortion against your will. And so it's really, really crazy how messed up the laws are. But yet, if she has the baby, then if you're not married or whatever, you're stuck with child support so it never made sense to me in that way. But we got to pray for the man because he was crying. He did not want his wife to be in there. And he was saying, we just need childcare. So I happen to know a seminary wife who was post-abortive, and she regretted that. And she said, if you ever have any way that I can help, let me know. And so I talked to her real quick that morning, and she said, yes, I will babysit the other kids. You know, so she was trying to offer tangible help. And so I quick ran back and told the guy, but it was too late, you know, and he, I don't think he was able to persuade his wife to save the child. I'll stop there. Any questions or comments so far?
Yeah, I'd like to hear, Renee has given us a list of people we could pray for and things, and we came up with a few ideas too. So as people on life teams, how could you use prayer? How could you incorporate that with your group if you wanted to go down and stand in front of a planned pregnancy? What do you think? Renee mentioned taking someone with you, right? Could you pray those prayers, take turns praying prayers, holding hands in a circle, or just standing in a partner and praying them out loud? That could be one way that you could do that, right? You could engage in that way, and which is a non-confrontational way, right? Which is maybe not as intimidating as going up to the gate and saying, hey, can we talk about what's happening here? But just being a witness in prayer. You know, like she said, that they were looking for a sign from God, and you standing there praying are that sign, right? Whether you're holding a sign or not. But even writing some prayers out in advance. I know that the Nebraska team, when they go up, because they've done it before, They do take written prayers with them, and they take turns praying the written prayers, but then they also take their hymnals and they sing hymns. They sing a verse or two outside the clinic, and they sing, and then they pray, and then they sing again, and then they pray, and they kind of do a rotation. So that would be, could some of those things be prepared ahead of time? And what if, let's say you're doing like a week on campus, or a month, this month is on the unborn. Could any of those prayers be used throughout that month? So what could you do with them? What do you guys think?
I think that you can be intentional about, if you're having meetings with your team, being intentional about praying those there, but then also submitting the prayer requests to like Chapel on Campus and other organizations that are praying regularly, to making sure that those issues are included and that those people are getting prayed for consistently.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I know, Jesse, you guys did a phenomenal job with a kind of a week on campus. This kind of a life week, right? But you focused on human trafficking, right? And each day had a prayer. And so you could send out a prayer a day for a week on the unborn, right? And cover those different areas. So that's great. I also had another question, Renee, before you move on to posters. So you said that there's a little bit of training that people go through ahead of time. What is before they go down, and then they go down with the group? What does that training look like?
It looks kind of like what I'm doing now with you. It can be, 15, 20 minutes. And sometimes at the Lutherans for Life conferences, I've gotten in the schedule to take people down to the clinic. So we would always meet at the hotel at a certain time and talk about what to expect, what's it going to be like, and mostly focusing on the gentle, graceful way that we are going to do this, and not the ugly yelling way. And so most of them have never gone down, and so they really appreciated doing that. Mostly just, I think, giving a little orientation. If you've been down there before, so you can say, we'll park here and we'll walk over here. We'll stand on the sidewalks. Inside, you're going to see the escorts. The sidewalk counselor is at the driveway, so you don't have to say anything. But you can walk up and down, or you can stand still and pray. You can pray with a partner or a small circle, like Michelle said, or you can pray by yourself. So when I'm there with a friend, I like to walk and pray out loud together, or stand still and pray. When my husband is gone, he's much more of a personal, quiet guy. So he would much prefer to pray by himself, or bring his little Bible and read and pray, rather than having a group activity. So it can be either way. And whether you have just a couple of you or have a bigger group, probably take a little bit bigger group before you have courage to sing, rather than you and your friend in a duet. But I'm going to remember that. We haven't tried that really, but that would be good. And
yeah, I think they even do like a liturgy, a small liturgy sometimes. So anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, there's a lot of Catholics that are down often in front of our clinic praying the rosary, or having a liturgy if they go in a group out loud. So
You mentioned like that we don't want to get political. Could you like give a few examples? Like the first thing I thought of was like not bringing up Roe versus Wade or something like that. But could you show say what kind of stuff you want to avoid, like getting political?
Well, for example, there's another thing called Life Chain. Have any of you done that, where you stand on a Sunday in October on a busy street holding posters? That's usually you've done that, Lauren? Yeah, usually the first Sunday in October, and it's in about 500 cities. But my husband doesn't like to do that on election years, because he doesn't want to appear that we're Republican, because you don't want to turn people off with politics. or they would never listen to you. We're not there to worry about how they vote or who they support, but we're just worried about the women and children that are going to die there. I think if you had posters that had one nation under God, that to me seems more political. Or if you have them in a certain party's colors. But one of the pregnancy centers here in St. Louis is a big booming thing, but they are very, very political. And they let it be known how Republican they are and who they're supporting and that sort of thing. But I much prefer the small group that I've been going down with, that it's not big and glitzy, but they're the ones that are doing so much more successful work, and they don't mention who you should vote for or anything like that, because there are Democrats for life, there are Republicans for life, there's Republicans that are probably for choice. And so I think, I don't know if I answered you very well. I can't explain it super, but does that help, Brooke?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, some of the signs, and Michelle has a handout that she's going to send out to you that I sent her earlier that has all this written down, so you don't have to remember it all. But I do want to have a conversation and talk about it. But some of the signs that I liked, it depends where you're looking. If you're looking out in the street, you might have one sign if it's geared towards the cars driving by. If you're looking towards the women, either walking in or driving in, and they can certainly see the signs as well, you might have different things. For example, love life, born and unborn. I like one that says birth mothers are brave. Love and support them both, with maybe a picture of a mom and a baby. Pro-woman, pro-child, pro-life. So you've got to say, we're not just worried about the babies, we're worried about the women, because that's, if you can get the women, then you save the baby. These gals are in such crisis, they're just thinking about themselves, and they're worried, and how am I going to get out of this mess that I've gotten myself into? There's one that we have, pregnant, you're not alone. Or if you're looking at the street, honk if you're pro-life. So a lot of people like to honk. We get bad honks and good honks. So but you got to remember, everybody that gives me a bad honk has a story. There's a reason that they believe what they believe. And my guess is that either they are post-abortive or somebody they know has had an abortion, and they feel like they have to defend that choice. A lot of brave men and women will come forward and say, I regret my abortion, and even hold a sign like that, like in DC for the March for Life, or I regret lost fatherhood. So they will come forth, but most people who've had abortions, well, I really don't know at what percentage of women and men are able to change their minds and admit what they did was wrong, because it's very hard to say you were wrong. My husband and I were just talking about that tonight over dinner. We want to defend ourselves and defend our choices and what we've done, because if we admit we were wrong or we did something bad, then it's hard to forgive ourselves and hard to go forward. Another one for cars is smile, your mother chose life. Or pregnant, call or text and then have the number of the local pregnancy center, so that as they're driving by, that they might see a number. Or if they're stopped at the stoplight, then they have time to copy that down. I like this one, you are strong, you are beautiful. So trying to build up, and I noticed that locally we don't have a lot of signs that mention abortion, like abortion kills children. Sometimes I've held for Life Chain, I've held up one, abortion hurts women. So there I'm focusing on the woman. But I think if, and I'm not quite sure why they don't have a lot of abortion in the names of the ones here locally. They've got one sign that they have by the driveway. So we just want to, with our signs, we don't want to be graphic or angry or harsh. I saw one picture of people in front of a clinic and they had, murder occurs here and things like that. The word murder is so harsh. That would make me want to run away instead of somebody reaching out to me. If I saw a sign about murder, I would run in the faster I could. I don't know about you. Any comments on signs or messages that you think would be helpful?
I think you nailed it when you said earlier, we want to be gospel motivated, right? So throwing the law in someone's face is not going to make them come to you and start a discussion. It's just going to either A, push them away, or B, make them angry with you and start an argument, right? And an argument and a discussion, those are two different things. So,
right.
And perhaps that's part of why, maybe it is best not to have a sign that says abortion kills, because again, that is a law message. That's not a gospel message. The gospel message is that Jesus forgives, and just as importantly, that God made life, that your life is precious, and so is your baby's. Those are gospel messages. So, what other messages do you guys think that you would use? What would work for college students?
I think this is like college students and everyone. I think love them both is a really powerful one, especially with a lot of discussions like surrounding today's and a lot of the reasoning why people give for abortion is, making it clear that we don't just care about, we're not pro-birth, we're pro-life and we're for life. That includes both the mother and the child. So making it clear that we're not just pro-birth and that we're willing to be there for both individuals.
Yeah, I agree with that, which is, I really like the message, you are not alone, being there and saying there are other resources that'll help you through it. Not just that, like, we want you to have a baby, but we want you to be able to be a mother or give that baby a good home and help you through the whole process.
Great. Yeah, and that kind of goes along with the idea that some people will say you just care about them not being killed, but you don't want to help the women. And so that's why we need, like you said, Brooke, we need to offer the women support and let them know that we're not just going to abandon them once they turn around from the clinic, that we're going to be there for them. I wanted to tell you a little bit about the St. Louis group called Coalition for Life. And I think I put the website on the handout, which you'll get, as well as the 40 Days for Life note, that they have hired college kids or kids in the gap between high school and college to stand at the clinic, and they are the spokespeople. And they do such a good job. They've been trained in it, and they know what to say. They wear orange vests like a traffic director. And so just visually, people are more likely to stop when someone's waving at you and they've got a vest on. And they're talking to the woman inside, the driver, because the driver's the one controlling the car. So instead of talking over the driver, often it's somebody else bringing the woman for the abortion. And they'll, offer support. Give them a card and say, we can give a free ultrasound or a free pregnancy test, rather than them having to go in and pay for that. There's a mobile medical unit parked across the street where there's an ultrasound inside, and they can take them over there for the free ultrasound or the free pregnancy test. Or if the unit's not there, then they can direct them where they can go for that. And these kids I've never seen any of them not smiling, even when it's freezing and snowy outside. And this method, we used to have what they call saves. We'd have between 12 and 20 women in a year change their mind at our clinic. And then once they started doing what they call the St. Louis method, then it went to about 350 women a year. It's like 20 times more per year. And so now they've had over 3,000 babies saved in just the last few years by using this gentle approach. And in St. Louis, the laws are more rigorous for abortion against, like if you're 16, you need parental permission. But in Illinois, right across the Mississippi River, just 18 miles away, Planned Parenthood opened secretly another clinic over there. The workers who were constructing it had no idea what they were working on. They thought it was just a health center, and then it came out it was a clinic 2 weeks before it opened. And so they went over there, and a lot of the traffic from St. Louis has gone there. So what did they do? They've got the interns now from Coalition for Life over on the sidewalk, and they were able to rent a building, an office right next to Planned Parenthood. And so they're right there on the sidewalks and trying to make a difference there in Illinois. And they have been. It's a little trickier over there, but they followed where the need was. And I'm grateful for them and the way they're doing it. But they go through training, and lay people like me, I've gone through the training, but they're so much better, and it is scary. So if I'm the only one there and there's no one there, sometimes I will try to stop a car as it's going in. But even though I've been done it for a long time, it's that's when you get scared, because you feel like the life is on the line. So I would say, don't worry about that so much. Don't think you have to talk to go down and pray or to support others who are speaking, because your presence is such an encouragement to them, whether you go during 40 Days for Life or go down another time. But you can see, what clinic is in your area and where you might be able to go. You want to, of course, stay off the property and be nice to the workers going in. And just know that your presence there makes a huge difference in that. Let's see, anything else to look for the weather. I always say it's a 10-degree difference here at our clinic. It's much colder and nastier, which is kind of fitting. So when we used to take people from the seminary, I'd take extra hats and gloves for the students who would not necessarily come. And I remember when Jeff would go, Jeff Duncan right there would go with us, he and his wife and girls. And he even went to DC with me with the teenagers. So if you've never been to the March for Life, I know Michelle's getting a group organized, and as she wrote in her email, I've been many, many times chaperoning the kids from Lutheran High School. Even when I wasn't working there anymore, they still kept asking me to come. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to go down to the clinic and pray. I think during the fall, I try to go once a week during the 40 days, and the spring kind of as a Lenten observation. I'll probably try to do that again, since it's pretty close and easy to go down and pray. If once you've been, you can go down by yourself, and usually there's probably somebody else there. I think if there's not going to be anybody else there at all, I recommend going with somebody so that you are not by yourself. Once I was there by myself, totally on a very snowy day. And the clinic manager drove through the gates and kind of yelled at me. And I knew it wasn't good to be there by myself. So I left. She didn't want me to stand near the driveway. But anyway, I hope it can be a good experience when you have that opportunity to go. So let's talk questions, or, I mean, if you're talking, and I'm sure Michelle and maybe you've had other apologetics helping you once you're talking about why not to abort, then the question is, well, what is it? If it's a child, then you won't. But on the sidewalk, that's not necessarily the time for apologetics. That's the time for love.
Yeah, so we've talked about that, and in my training that I do with college students, that's one of the elements that we don't. Yeah, the sidewalk counseling is not a place for an argument. It's a place to pray, a place to support, a place to be a listening ear, to engage. If you can get them engaged in conversation, then that is a great first step, right? Just that engagement and that reassurance that there is another choice that's better. So yeah, what questions came up for you guys? I do like the idea you've distinguished. There's a sidewalk counselor that is only one person, right? Not everybody should be talking. Not everybody should be saying, hey, come over and talk to us, because that's very intimidating. But just one person has that role. Is that correct?
Yes. Otherwise, it's too crazy and chaotic. If everybody's trying to talk at once, then they will certainly run away.
Yeah. So really, when we think of going down and engaging in that way, it's less intimidating to think about just going and standing and praying with friends, right? And allowing the person who's been trained or getting that training, or choosing one person that feels comfortable with it to do that sort of talking. Just because, again, we can all pray, right? We can all be present, and we can all pray, and we can all hold signs. But yeah, so that maybe it takes a little pressure off. What things does this inspire? Any questions or any thoughts?
I think that this really went along well with, we had Deaconess Gillette from Word of Hope a couple weeks ago, and obviously she was talking about the after side of it, the post-abortion healing, but she talked about very similarly with the kind of, it's different forms, but it's still a traumatic experience in some way with an unexpected pregnancy. And so, understanding the fight or flight response that the woman and even the, male in the relationship may be going through, and how important it is to be there to listen, and to share in that emotion and experience, because that's what they need in the moment. And the time for logic and the time for plans and moving forward comes later. But until they have the time to feel that emotion and process what they're understanding and what they're going through, there's not going to be a lot of hope for, making a good decision, because no one makes good decisions when they're under, intense stress and trauma. But being able to be there and help them process what the situation is will help them move forward in a different way. So I thought that was really interesting, kind of the comparison of, two different forms of trauma, but being there and loving them as an individual first before you come up with a plan.
Yeah, very good. If you're talking, I want to give you one more name, Stephanie Gray, Gray. If you ever want to learn more about the apologetics, she is an excellent communicator, and she's really, you can find her on YouTube, or I just Googled her today, Stephanie Gray, to be able to hear her methods of getting people to engage. But back to the sidewalk, I just want to say, be ready to be sad, because you're there, and on the other side of that wall, you know what's going on. And that is very sad. And often people on the way home, if we've gone together with friends, the car is kind of quiet, and they're so glad they went and spent time praying there. But it is sad because you may feel helpless. that you can't stop it, or their cars are coming in and their people are walking in. Escorts are strolling over to their car, kind of pressuring them to get out of the car. A subtle pressure when someone's standing there and you know they're waiting for you, then you're more likely to get out of the car, even though you might want to just sit in there and consider if you want to go in. So a lot of evil is there, but we're fighting the spiritual forces of evil, like in the armor of God in Ephesians 6. So know that, kind of be ready for that so you're not ambushed if you stop and think about where you are. But then you can say, well, Lord, you know what has happened. You know what is going on, and you will use these prayers for your glory. And we have to, like many things that you pray for, you don't know the answer, how it's going to turn out, but that's what we're commanded to do. Scripture says, defend the helpless. And this is doing a little part to defend the helpless, both the babies, but also the women who feel helpless and hopeless. So you're giving them a little bit of hope.
In response to that, and thank you for mentioning that, because that's not even something I would have thought about, but the after effects. And you did mention that there was usually just a discussion afterwards, a debriefing. You know, as college students going out, if you were to come back, or as a high school teacher, if you were to come back after that event, I mean, who would you want there to help you through that debriefing? Is there, or do you think that that's something you'd be capable of doing just as a group? What do you guys think?
I think that, you know, depending on who's going, and especially like the first couple of times for a lot of individuals, it'd probably be, and like I would prefer to have, you know, like either Pastor Jeff, our campus pastor, or Deaconess Betsy, our university deaconess, you know, they're on hand, not only to help guide the conversation, but also, you know, like you talked about, it's an emotional experience, being there and understanding what's happening so close to you, especially, you know, if you have interactions with these women, and then they decide to go in anyway, and knowing that, you know, you tried and it didn't work out, but being reminded of, you know, it's not on you and it's in God's mercy now, what happens with that child. So I think that it would be nice to have, you know, especially like in our age ranges, college students, to have someone who's more authoritative, as far as there to speak the truth, as far as what we know to be true, as what God's word tells us, but to also be there kind of like as a calming presence.
Yeah, I think even as an adult, I would like a pastor there to help debrief, to lead that, right? Someone that we look to for spiritual guidance. Yeah, I think that's very wise, Jesse. What do you think about at the high school level, Lauren? I'm like running through my head because, you know, as a former high school teacher, thinking, okay, I mean, I would definitely want a pastor, I think, present the entire time, because I could envision students maybe getting sad there, right? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good idea. We don't, at our school, we don't have a, you know, pastor on campus, but just one of our, we have a lot of local churches. Yeah, I think that would be a good idea, definitely, especially for the debriefing part, like you said, and whatever might come up in that conversation, or, you know, emotions that might come up.
I know after the March for Life, we have a debriefing in Washington, D.C., and there's some interesting conversations that come out of that, interesting thoughts. You know, in that regard, there's a lot of people there that are joyful, and it's a peaceful protest, and there's a lot of positive things that they see, but there's also some reflective. And I would think that the reflection in this case with sidewalk counseling and praying in front of clinics would be probably not as filled with joy, especially if you're getting bad honks and finger signs. Not that you would get a lot of them, but I don't think I saw a single bad finger sign when I was in Washington, D.C. for the March for Life, because again, like you said, Renee, safety in numbers, right? No one's going to come up to a crowd of 3,000 people and say, you know, something bad.
More like 300,000, right?
Yeah, right.
No, I think the debriefing that I mentioned, and don't think you have to be all formal with this if you don't have a pastor in your group and it's just you and your friend that go down. But just talking about the experience, what did you notice? How did you feel? What did you see? So that you guys can talk about it together because you just shared the experience rather than you going home and processing yourself. Anytime you've done something, it's fun to share the experience and what it was. And before we end, I have to show you this little girl is one of the 3,000 babies that was saved. And it's such a joy. We talk about the sadness when people go in, but it's such a joy when you are there and somebody changes their mind. And some days they have up to 4 women turn around. So that's so rewarding. And if you get to witness that, then it's really wonderful. So we have to remember these little smiles, and we can rejoice in however many little smiles we get to see. So I guess, I know it's about time for us to end, but thank you for coming. And I encourage you to try to make a plan, whether you do it before Christmas or you do it when it gets a little bit warmer in the spring. That's why I always hated the March for Life being in January, because it's always cold in DC then. But to kind of store it away and say, okay, I'm going to try this. And then just see if it's your thing. It's kind of like a few things in life I've thought, no, I don't want to do that. That's not for me. And then I'd do it and I'd find out, wow, okay, this is okay. I guess I can do this. And so I encourage you to give it a try. And here, even at the seminary, we had a thing that said, stand once for life, just hoping that all our students would go down there just one time and experience it. And they said it really changed their ministry, how they would see the issue. And Jeff is nodding. Do you have a comment on that?
I had already been a For Life Lutheran, but it brought it into a different area of reality in my head, because it's one thing to, I didn't know anybody particularly. I didn't have any, previous abortion experience. And then to be standing at a place where I knew that was happening, it really was an impact in my life. I recognize what you're talking about in, the after effect, coming home being saddened. I remember how silent the car ride was on the way back. We were chatting and laughing and, mourning stuff on the way down. And then afterwards, it was just, the air was let out of the conversation. But it still was very important, and it did affect me for years and still has affected me to this day. And we did the same thing in one of the trips to DC for the March for Life, headed down to one of the clinics in Washington. And, I really think that you need to do this if not regularly, at least a few times to make this reality sink in, that this is happening day in and day out.
And when you said it affected you for years, you don't mean you were sad for years. No, it just kind of opened your eyes.
No, it opened my eyes and it affects me in terms of the empathy that I have for those who are involved in these kinds of decisions. That I don't want to just say, well, another day. You're always thinking about it now, because this is something that is affecting their life for years to come now, that they're involved in these decisions, and their life is going to be changed completely because of it as well.
Yeah, and if you think of, this is called front lines, and this is the last stop for the babies. And so if somebody was about to jump off a bridge and you were there, you could try to stop it. And by you, not that you have to talk, but by you being there, it's so poignant, I think, to think, I mean, we're all involved in this life issue, and we do it in many different ways, but this is kind of a crucial thing. We need to be there to support the women in that way. So,
and hopefully the Holy Spirit will move in our hearts and create that desire. And who knows how the ripple effect will be, right? As we share this opportunity with others. So thanks to those of you who came tonight. It was great having you. And I'm sure, is it okay, Renee, if I send them your email if they have any follow-up questions?
please. Yeah, I put it on the bottom of the handout.
Yeah, that's right. Okay. Any final questions?
I'm going to say God bless you. I'm just so inspired by you guys, and the ways the Lord will use you in whatever way it is, and that you're part of his family and wanting to serve him and in the life arena. So thank you.
They are inspiring to me too. Always. All right. We will see you guys again, hopefully soon.
Thanks for joining us for today's life topic. Check out whyforlife.org or email Michelle at whyforlife.org to find out how and when you can go live with us at our next Chats for Life session. Or join us next time, right here at Why for Life Podcasts, where youth learn how to be gospel-motivated voices for life.